I think we really have to lean in. Anyway, that's a big topic for another day. Maybe we
Really,
should flip the table and do some more business oriented
yeah.
questions.
So, I mean, I'd be really interested in your feel on this shift in business models because, I mean, you've mentioned you've been doing this for 10 years. So, when you founded Pencil, it was really quite ahead of the curve in going AI native as a business. Um, in the framing put forward by Y Combinator, it's this kind of winning model as software and services. And I mean, we've experimented at Pencil with a few different models and options. And as a group at Brandtech, we've experimented with a few different models and options. So what do you think the winning model looks like?
Yeah, I think that agencies, if we're talking to them as an audience, have like there's a fork in the road, right? Ultimately, do you become mostly technology with a bit of services,
Hmm.
or do you stay very services, right? And expect that kind of artisanal, pure human approach will just be, require or command more and more of a premium, and you will need to get better and better, and there'll be fewer and fewer agents that can compete in that way. But that's the route you're going to go down. And I see a world where you have some very, very tech-enabled services, which are mostly tech, and you also have some very pure play services that are very artisanal and top tier.
Hmm.
I think the general answer to this question on agency business model, everyone knows to be value. Charge the clients based on the value you deliver, which is total alignment of incentives. But agencies have been talking about that for 15 years, and it's very hard to get away from the billable hour. In part, measurement. In part, we've trained clients how to buy in. They don't want to take the risk on buying on value. They want to pay the lowest possible and get the most. So it's difficult, right? So going back to the fork in the road concept, I think that brand tech and Pencil clearly are going down that very kind of like tech led approach. Always a service layer as well, but very tech led. And in those cases, you're going to price like tech. You're going to price on usage and
Yeah.
consumption and number of assets delivered and all of that. It's very transparent, and the incentives are aligned that way. I think for the teams that go the other way and are more, we're going to stay very service, very artisanal. You might end up being like a top tier law firm where you charge a ridiculous hourly rate for access to the most incredible talent in the world.
Hmm.
And you don't necessarily need to change the business model. You just need to be able to command very, very high pricing for obvious value delivery.
Yeah.
And then, sure, maybe there's a third category where you can do end to end and you're able to really quantify and charge on value outcome to a client, like market share growth or whatever that they really, really care about. And that's an option for some as well.
Yeah. So I think thinking about, okay, let's take one particular view of how that could look. So let's say we've got agencies essentially running through workflows in a very software style. Um, if they're using Pencil, what does Pencil need to be good at to support that? Are we talking about the kind of orchestration and strategy and guardrails around the process, or are we talking about the generation of assets itself?
Yeah, I think that there are two like modalities we're building for in Pencil. One, both are agentic, right? One is that the human is very much in the driver's seat, and you chat with like a group chat with agents, and you guide the process, but you chat with one agent and then another, or you allow them to chat with each other, and ultimately you work through a process to answer a brief, and out pops the output.
Yeah.
Um, um, the other is that you build a predefined workflow, largely mapped to a brief type. So when brief type A comes in, this nodal workflow of agents picks it up. The brief runs through that workflow and out pops the output. And a human is only called in if something goes wrong. For example, a score says the asset's off brand or this isn't very good or whatever. And that's the human in the loop model. And
Hmm.
that I think works if you've very carefully mapped a brief type to a repeatable set of actions and a repeatable deliverable. For example, give me a string of potentially viral TikTok ads every day that combine this product, this brand, and the latest TikTok trend. That is a fully automatable workflow. The ads just show up at the client store every day. We're also moving towards a world where a brief isn't even necessary, right? There's a
Yeah.
standing brief to grow market share for this product, and the data is the brief, right? This is trending today. There's a standing brief, deliverables, deliverables, deliverables. So that leans into this world of preset agentic workflows. But in those cases, you need expert humans to map the brief type,
Yeah.
build the workflow, and then step in when something goes wrong. And as the technology gets better, evolve the agentic workflow so that it uses the best models, the best techniques, and all of that. So there's still a role for people. It's just that the role is increasingly not in delivery, it's in management of
Yeah.
the creative system.
And I think that kind of like data-led briefing really feeds into how you can demonstrate return on investment through use of AI. I mean, if you're starting from data and using data as the big driver in that loop, ROI should be really clear and visible. What do you think that AI-enabled agencies should be focusing on to prove their ROI?
Well, things that they can measure, right? Like if the brief is to make sure that you are always relevant on TikTok, right? Then you connect the TikTok trends data as the input that informs
Mhm.
what happens next, and you measure whether you have got into the top 10 in that audience, in that market, or whatever on TikTok based on views, right? And that is delivery of value per that requirement that the client has. Now, if you elevate that to, I want more conversions on this particular product, PDP on e-commerce, or something bigger, bigger, bigger. You could go all the way up to the most top level marketing objectives like growing market share for a brand globally. You're right that the data that comes in, if you can get the data in at the beginning, you can use the same data at the end to prove the efficacy
Yeah.
of that specific agentic workflow. And that's nice because it means that you don't get bogged down into like, okay, we launched a TikTok, some TikTok content. Have we shifted market share? Like it's very hard to have a conversation about value when you're that far removed. But I think starting small, starting very focused, we think our brand is going to win if we do this on TikTok, we do this on e-commerce, building workflows that use the right data to both inform and measure the agents. Then you can start to have smaller but more meaningful conversations about value and therefore pricing.
Perfect. I mean, I could keep this conversation going on for hours more. I've got so many thoughts now about A/B testing that have just jumped into my head, but we'll save that for another time. I think one of our big takeaways here really is that this request for startups from YC isn't just about AI getting better tools. It is this whole ecosystem. It's the redesign of industries. It really is a significant shift. But I think the pencil view of this really is still very much that people need to be at the center of this. We're talking about rebuilding organizations. That means rebuilding teams. That means reskilling, upskilling people to be the guiding light in all of this. So there's so much to think about there. And I think it's a thread that we'll probably pick up on in plenty of future discussions over the coming weeks and months. But thank you once again for joining me, Will.
Thank you, Tim.
And thank you everyone who's joined us live. And we'll